Spoken
I
name.
haven't thought about flying for a long time. I haven't dreamed of that moment when I was alone above the clouds for a long time. I haven't dreamed of waking up in a room surrounded in blue and green grass for more years than I could dream of remembering. I haven't walked back into the past or scratched on the doors of my origins, where it all came from, just to hang up that cape for the last time.
Return to Kent Town 10th Year Anniversary Edition is a revised version of Andy N's first poetry book. The book can be purchased from Amazon and it contains numerous additional material.
Spoken name.
You wake up one morning after not reading a book since your school days and you decide to be a writer. With no good or bad writing to compare against your own. You just know how to write and anyone who tells you otherwise is wrong. Hell, maybe they're jealous of your natural ability to craft a masterpiece. After all, most people need to learn through a combination of books, courses, critical feedback and workshops. Not you though. It's not their fault they don't realise your natural talent, but they soon will.
How to Write Wrong is the new book by Amanda Steele. The book, which is an interactive story, gives the reader multiple options throughout its story. The book can be purchased from Amazon.
Spoken
Thank
name.
you today for tuning in to Spoken Label. Spoken Label was originally set up at the beginning of 2016 and as of recording has over 200 sessions in our archive. Although the podcast can be heard on Anchor, iTunes, Apple, Spotify, YouTube and literally 10 or 11 other networks, the full archive can be found at Spoken Label, all one word, spokenlabel.bandcamp.com. On Bandcamp, it is set as pay what you want, so you are entitled, if you wish, you can download it or stream it for nothing. But if you throw me a couple of pennies my way, it is always eternally grateful to help me maintain the operating costs and future running costs of the podcast. Enjoy.
Spoken name.
Hi guys, Andy N. Spoken Label on a Sunday afternoon, back in his den on Zoom. I've got a gentleman with me today, all the way from my old hometown of Stretford. I'd say he's more Old Trafford really. And Paul, who I'm introducing in a minute, I can't remember when I first met you, Paul. When was it? It was a few years back, wasn't it?
I remember doing a thing at the Jam Street, above the Jam Street. There was like a sort of poetry session thing. There was you and me, Chris Jam, an American fella whose name I can't remember, and a guy who ran I'm Not a Silent Poet, who's passed away now.
Oh, Reuben Woolley. Oh, yeah.
Reuben,
Fantastic.
lovely fella. Yeah, really good poet.
Big fan of Reuben was,
Yeah, so that's the first time I remember meeting you. Yeah.
Yeah, I know we'd heard your name. I'd heard your name a few times before that. So it's a case of anyone knows, obviously, we've got Porl Stevens with me today. Now, that said, it's such a big circuit. You hear names sometimes when you meet people. And I've definitely seen Paul read a few times at various more larger nights. And that's what I love about you, Paul. When you go on stage, your persona on stage is completely different, I think, what you see in person sometimes.
Yeah, it is that. It's all just an act, of course. Everything is,
Yeah. Now, you were telling me on mic before, obviously, so I want people to hear the story. Now, you started, didn't you, performing in like 1993, when you were living in Swansea, didn't you?
Yeah. I used to be a drugs worker in Swansea, and like I was saying to you before, I only started writing when I was in my early 20s, because at school, and before my early 20s, I mean, I wanted to write. I'm very dyspraxic, so I couldn't actually do handwriting very well. So I couldn't really do any creative writing. I bought a word processor when I was 23, and I just went bananas with it, and wrote tons of poems very, very quickly. And then I went to work in Swansea for a little bit and met a guy there called Sid Howells, who ran a little publishing imprint called the Fuku Press, and he published some of my stuff. And he had me supporting his band, The Disasters, at various dingy, skanky pubs in Swansea. So that was my start, really. And then a year or two later, I was back in Manchester, and I started going to the Frog and Bucket nights, the what's it called, Commonwood.
Yeah,
Commonwood Poetry Slam there.
Yeah, you look back now in those days, don't you? Like, Commonwood's still going, because I know I've been to view the workshop Jackie Hagan used to do in their Bay Old Pace. It was great fun. It was those days, were certainly. So And we were talking just obviously then, basically, you came out before that. I went to watch a few of them. I never actually performed. It was some years later I started. But we both were out talking about Rosie the Ghost's Creatures in the Night, weren't we? Open mic. And you were talking about a lot of the people that came out of those nights, weren't you, as well? So.
Yeah, well, like I say, there was Mike Gary. I remember very well from then. And he used to go under the name Holden Caulfield for some bizarre reason. I don't know why. There was Chloe Poems. There was Jerry Potter in a wig. There was a fantastic Carol Batten, Bish. A bloke called Carl. I was just about to talk about him before, wasn't I? There was this sort of strange Jewish guy from North Manchester who was always really drunk, and he'd get kicked out of poetry nights half the time for heckling people. But his routine was like watching, Waiting for Godot or something like that. It was incredible sort of one-man dramaturgy, and I've no idea what happened to him. I think he's probably the most memorable poet of all the ones that I've ever seen in Manchester. He was like a little Samuel Beckett in the body of an obese, drunken Jewish guy.
Oh, I've definitely never seen him. I'd love to see him. If anyone knows who he is and where he is, get him to get in contact.
Yeah, well, this is it. The only person I can actually corroborate his existence with is Charlie Pink, who remembers him as well.
Blimey, Charlie's fantastic.
There's only me and Charlie who can actually remember him. Otherwise, he's just a sort of mythical creature.
Yeah, I love Charlie. I love Charlie. He's a fantastic guy. And anyone who's not seen him with his duo with Darren Lee Gilmore, check him out. Oh, brilliant!
Yeah, he's come into his own, I think, as an absolutely beautiful songwriter.
Yeah.
The last few years.
He really has, and that's for sure. Oh God, yeah. And he lives doesn't live far from you then, does he, Charlie? Even then thinking about it.
He's in Hume. Yeah.
He's Hume, isn't he? He's got to be Hume based. Of course he's Hume based, yeah. You find Paul, don't you? You get so know some people. I've only met Charlie about 10, 15 times. But it's always a pleasure when I see him. He's such a nice bloke. That's why.
Yeah, he's a lovely guy, and he's one of those people. I've actually been around, in gigs with him, and I've done gigs with him years and years before I knew him. And it's just one of them things that it's just like, do you do that one, or were you at that one? And it's like, yeah.
Yeah, you do. It's like, have you found that over the years since you started performing, Paul, has your approach to you, where you perform and your work changed much, has it?
It has. I mean, when I was younger, it was a mixture of abject terror and alcohol. And I think as I've got older, I've got a lot more relaxed and calm. I don't get stage fright so much anymore. That's probably taken the edge off what I do a little bit. I think I'm probably better in a lot of ways. I don't feel as motivated to perform as much and as often as I used to do, really, because I've done it for so long and in so many different contexts over the years that, after a while, I think you sort of reach a point where, I'm quite happy to be in the audience these days for the most part, but I do like performing sometimes if there's for specific things,
Yeah, I get what you mean. So, like, you also you have the alias of Reverend Paul, didn't you, going around for some years as well?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's a couple of involvements with larger organisations. I mean, I was involved in Speakeasy, which was, there's me, Shagan Lee French, Chris Jam, Shirley May, friend Jada and Colin with musicians, Chanjay Kunde was involved. A lot of people who went on to do some really, really impressive stuff. And it was the sort of multicultural poetry and music collective. We collaborated with each other as poets as well as with the musicians, and we produced a lot of sort of themed shows at the Green Room, and then Contact Theatre and Band on the Wall as well. So I was involved in that, and then at the same time I met a chap called Stuart Crozier from a band called Superstring, and we formed a band called Rev Porl and the Voice of God, which had anywhere between 2 and 7 people in it, with a horn section and all sorts.
I've seen you twice, and I think it was once with the 3 of you, and another time with 7 of you. Right. So that was
right.
Both completely different experiences. That's for sure with it. So.
Yeah. So I did a lot of stuff with musicians as well for a long time. In terms of actually just doing spoken word stuff on its own, like I say, it's difficult for me because I've always been more of a collaborator really with people. And I find actually just doing, I mean, although I have played poetry sets on my own, quite a lot as well, there's not really the same satisfaction in that to me as there is with working up a whole piece with a whole bunch of other people.
Yeah, no, okay, completely. I've done a couple of bands over the years, and I think it's took me a while to get used to it. Get after my last band packed up, and I've never had the impetus to go and do another one after that. So I know what you mean. It's like you get a different buzz, don't you? If there's 4 or 5 of you on the stage, you're doing like an orchestra almost. I think. Like you said,
Well, it's part of a thing, isn't it? It's a social thing too, isn't it? Well, you know, I mean, it's being out there with a bunch of mates, and also I think just in terms of the sort of gigs that you get as well, I think are more varied, at least in that sort of context.
Oh yeah, completely. Completely. What's the strangest gig you've done then? 'Cause I know you've done so many over the years of musicians and stuff.
I've done a gig to one person. A whole poetry set to a really, really unimpressed fellow in a bar who just kept on shouting out the names of John Cooper Clarke poems at me to do that one. No. I married a monster from outer space. Do that one. I don't know that one. I just know mine. That was quite appalling. I played a festival in Wales with a band, and the stage just got completely taken over by these crusties. Like there were just these complete hippies and punks and stuff just joined in on various instruments. And I've done things, you know. I mean, I'm playing a gig at Band on the Wall as well one time with Speakeasy, when just like other people just joined in. They just got on stage and just started singing and rapping and God knows what. And it's just like, but I just carried on. It was, you know, that was interesting.
Oh, I've got a good one. I'll give you just one of my quick stories here. That some years ago, I ended up doing a gig over at a gig in an independent record shop in Brighton. I knew a few people down that way,
right?
And I had all I had of it was an incomplete story, and then someone managed to persuade a cello player to come and join me. I had guitar pedals and a cello, and a sitar player that played them and loop pedals and his sitar. So the pair of them did an improvised noise set over the top of my incomplete story, which basically means it was interesting because I didn't know that I had no ending for the story. So basically, I had to stand there and improvise. It was about 20 minutes of this. And by the end of it, I was the stone deaf. I was
yeah. I mean, I love that sort of thing. I think any sort of unusual collaborations or whatever. My friend Jadev, when he did his composition MA, who's a composer for theatre and radio, I did the libretto for his composition, and that as a project, you know, was an interesting thing. I've got a commission at the moment for Mr. Scruff to write something for him. We did a thing for GM COVID commissions, which was me and a filmmaker and musician called Clive Hunt. So it's things like that you know, where you're commissioned with a theme and you've got people to work with. You know, that to me, that's the sort of area that I like working in.
Yeah, I think you do. Because I think when you do those sort of commission ones like you're doing there, you get something out of it. Like I think as writers, I always believe you've got to have new experiences all the time. So otherwise you just end up standing still. I think you're right in the sense of like do it with lots of other people, you learn stuff from all the time. Definitely that one. So have you got much going on at the moment creative wise then, have you, over lockdown, or was it
like I say, it's been quiet on the whole. Like I said, there was that GM COVID commissions thing. There's this thing with Mr. Scruff coming up. Maybe some more work with JDF, because he's moving in as my lodger in the next few weeks. So you know,
perfect then.
Try and pin him down for doing some stuff with me.
Oh yeah, can't escape it again.
It's a funny thing, this is, because we live in quite extreme times, but I don't find it's a very stimulating environment for me to write to, really. And I think about the sort of bland times that we used to live in, and everybody's very complacent, going, yeah, everything's all right and lovely, and that used to really rub me the wrong way. And I used to come out with all, you know, my best stuff, just like basically going, how dare you be so complacent, you know. Whereas these days it's just absolutely relentlessly horrible all the time. And there isn't very much you can say about that, really, apart from just look after yourself a bit. Yeah,
or you do like a 20-line poem saying it's shit 20 times. Yeah.
It's shit. Everybody knows it's shit. That's the thing. It's shit for everybody. And I don't really like stating the obvious, you know.
Yeah, you know. I can believe it. Like I think it's poets, don't we? Like I've known a few people, creative people, like I haven't wrote at all for 6 months or so now. Because we've been in Grotto since March, and so it'd be interesting to see when things return to some kind of normality. What happens to these creative people? Will people go back to it, or will they pack it in. You just don't know what the moment do we? So
Well, I think the thing is as well that you need something to write for, don't you? I mean, if you know that there's some poetry nights coming up, if that's what you do, then that gives you something to write for. You know, if you've got gigs coming up, or you've got, you know that people will be commissioning at some point for live performances, then that keeps you going. But at the moment, where we've got no idea what's going on, there isn't any impetus really.
Yeah.
You know, and all that does it for me these days, like I say, is somebody belling me and saying, you know, I'll give you some money to do this by this date, and all right, and off I go.
I've been like that with music, John, for the past 6 months because I've done quite a few bits and pieces because I've had people asking me, "Oh, can you do us an album from a label?" Okay, stuff like that. Yeah, you do not less songwriting, but I'm steady with it more than anything else. So I think you're right. It's time to a very, very unusual situation at the moment. That's for sure with it. So no, lots of, like I said, lots of my philosophy is let's wait and see what happens next, don't we? So Paul, definitely on that one. Yeah, if people want to find out more about you, where are they best going?
There is a Bandcamp for Rev Porl, so it's REVPORL Bandcamp, and then that's got all of the albums on that I did with Stu. There's some stuff on YouTube, some odd bits, really quite, you know, I mean, it's not curated by me at all, just things that people have filmed at gigs and stuff. At some point or other, I will get together a proper website with an archive on it. But at the moment, yeah, the Bandcamp site's the main one. And I think most of the better music. There's SoundCloud as well, which has got some sort of demos and outtakes and stuff from other bands on it, which is Rev Porl on SoundCloud again.
I'll make sure we have a look at that then, definitely. So, when was the last time when you did your Rev Porl stuff as a band? Because I saw you on 3 Minute Theatre, and that was a few years back. That gig.
Yeah, that's probably pretty much the last time, I think.
Last time, that was a noise.
We did some stuff at Moving Festival last year and the year before. We sort of got about a sort of semi-speakeasy reunion together and performed there. So the last time performing with musicians for me live was at Moving.
Wow.
Look, the 2 consecutive years.
Well, let's hope then that Paul definitely the case. And things will pick up probably. I don't know if it'll be this year, but obviously, like you said already, you've got your ex-bandmate moving in with you. Sure, it's a lot to yourself. It's a great time for you to sit down and get your album done.
Well, exactly. You know, I think we got, you know, I'll pin him down.
Yeah.
He's a good cook. So there's no downside. There's no downside to this at all.
So, out of interest, and obviously I'm backtracking. When you used to do your music together, how did you used to build up all your pieces? Then was it existing poems of yours, or did you have to work it round?
No, I've always written just lots of poems. I mean, the stuff that I hold in abeyance for, you know, that I don't perform or whatever. So people generally sort of write bits of music, and I'll just go through the folder and see what fits with it. So all the stuff that we've done, I mean, either the stuff that me and Stuart did or the stuff that I've done with J-Dev or the stuff we did with Speakeasy, was a case of, I mean, with Speakeasy stuff, because the shows were themed, it was writing a bunch of stuff to a theme, then listening to a few ideas that the musicians have and seeing what fits with what, really. And with Stuart, it was more of a case of him he was like a sort of riff machine. He'd just come out with tons and tons of music. So I'd just match what I had as best I could with what he came out with. You know. I think the thing with working with Jada is that he wanted to make it a little bit more collaborative. We want to make it a bit more collaborative. I'm not really a musician, and I don't have very many sort of strong opinions as to what should happen with things musically, which makes things a little bit awkward. I just say, do what you want, you know. It's not my department.
Yeah, providing you like it don't matter too much, does it really? So
yeah, exactly, yeah.
No, I get you mean. Yeah. But anyway, that's all the questions anyway, Paul. So what we'll do, we'll take a quick break, and when we come back, everybody, Paul's going to do a few poems for us. Hang around. I love hearing Paul's work. Take care, guys and girls. See you then.
Spoken, mate.
Hi, guys. It's Andy. I'm still got Paul with me. Paul's going to do us a couple of poems now. Over to you, my friend.
This first poem is called Ravens. Hunkered down inside the dawn, trapped inside the golden light, nameless men with shameless yawning flap and crow to aimless flight. Fitted shirt, symmetric tie, dinner in a metal box, one hunk of loaf, one unripe fruit, another tile falls from the roof. Uneven land, uneven welkin, blubber in a suit that's melting. Christ, we used to run this town. We had our own collective noun. Another mote falls from the eye, another blind man learns to see through plexiglass and pepper gas, and all his life will ever be. While we gather, battered but unbowed, take stock, reflect and swap old tales and booze and blaze until the night pours back, reveals the empty day. While down below us, young ones trail in patterns we've all trailed before. Another tile falls from the roof, a dark unkindness trails the youth. And they say when ravens leave the tower, the king will die, the kingdom fall. I say, no, this world, it's run by ravens, scavengers and vermin all. Another truth prevails the lie, another lie contains the truth. A dark unkindness takes the sky, another tile falls from the roof.
Brilliant.
Okay, this is the second poem. This is called Man Alive. Sometimes the city gets you sickly, stuck in the air between the walls. Sometimes those 5 fine fingers fail you, that subtle crack as friendship falls. Sometimes you're acting dumb and crazy, push the joke one step too far. Sometimes your breathy in the darkness is boring, pinholes in the stars. And sometimes you sing to the sky like you're the only man alive. Sometimes you sing to the sky like you're the only man alive. And fortune falls on those who lend it. Those who hold it watch it die. We did better in the old days when we looked kinder in the light. But all the work and all the chaos, the constant round of stop and go, this peary heart that's never heard, and all those things you'll never know, complete the circle and the sometimes, then we all roll round again. I turn to check my crumpled choir, this band of atavistic men. Sometimes we sing to the sky like we're the only men alive. Sometimes we sing to the sky like we're the only men alive. Yeah, we're still here and we're still singing. But you've gone from where you rotted. You're fucking swearing, fucking ringing through those corners where you're slotted. With a sports page and a crossword, a hint of jaundice in your eye. Sometimes this city gets you sickly, and sometimes your friends can make you cry. And sometimes I sing to the sky like you're the only man alive. Sometimes I sing to the sky like you're the only man alive.
Great stuff. Brilliant. I've heard you do that one a few times over the years, that Paul, so it was one of my favourites of yours. Brilliant.
Right, okay. Well, what I'm going to do, this is an old poem called Dr. Thirsty. Tanned by the fruit of an Afghan sky and 10,000 northern moons, the man high and dry whose hour never came, then it left too fucking soon. And broke left in the dark and blind, as if horses' husks on baling twines are hanging from around his eyes, marking gravity and loss and time. Marking years on the severance clock, old lovers piled in the corner like soiled socks, said he'd clean out his life, but his bedroom's locked. And he never saw the daylight, he could never taste the flavour, never caught the redemption flash of the unseen saviour. This note's for you. Calm now, the panic address, the hilt caress, the balanced redress, time to hit the streets and sort out this mess, fix those fractures with a compound now. Which medicine works best? The connoisseur's choice, cheap premium cider to wriggle and tickle and warm up inside. Time to ponder renewal and the groves of Persephone, the tenor draw, the trickle of brown honey. And he never saw the daylight, he could never taste the flavour. Stock still at the top of the stairwell to heaven, a farewell to arms and sweet legs 11. As his heavy set and milky eyes hanging from the sky at night, like the stars on his dressing room door, take flight. And he never saw the daylight, he could never taste the flavour, never caught the redemption flash of the unseen saviour. This note's for you.
Brilliant. I love it. Excellent. Excellent session, this, Paul. So we're on to the big finale now, aren't we?
Okay, yeah. Could you handle a longer one?
Yeah. It's fine to me, mate.
Okay.
You go for it, mate.
I'll try. Okay, I'll go full on Grateful Dead now for ages. Right, hold on.
I think it's not 40 minutes. I don't mind too much.
No, it won't be that long. Almost, not quite. I know poets and they just want attention, always mincing their words, lisping, pity me, pity me. I want to be mothered and coddled and fucked by bulimic girls in black dresses and glasses. But I know poets who ran to the hillside after burning their children and all their possessions with their lives in memories, their wives in rucksacks, their poems in prisons. And I know poets, heroic poets who always write large, who chop oaks with their words, who bellow from cliff tops and drown out the temples and flatten whole cities. And I'll shoot for the moon with these pea-shooter poems. I'll learn to love through these lines of lycanthropy, putting up stars with these verses of violence, one step ahead of the clocks and the mirrors, reflecting decay in the tide of our stasis. Oh, what a piece of work a man is. What an ugly piece. His greasy fingers swollen as he tears chunks from the feast. As the maelstrom outside threatens to disturb his selfish peace, he takes strips from the sacrifice. He feeds them to his beast that lurks beneath the table. Houdini's favourite pet, who says this ain't peace, it's complacency, the best that you can get. Oblivious, ignoring the rapping at the door, the 100 baying bailiffs, the undeserving poor, the flock of filthy wolverines, feet all broken sore, apocalyptic carol singers singing songs of war, the line of swollen bellies that stretches out of sight, the mountains forged from molehills and a world too fucked to fight. Houdini grips the cord, he pulls the heavy curtains tight. Houdini turns his tunes up, turns that beast out for the night. Houdini dims the light, he pours another glass of gin and turns each clock, each mirror to the wall. Time shall not time him. Time shall not time him. Time shall not time him. And so Houdini doesn't notice when his cardboard walls cave in. When the sucker punches pit his gut, the virus strips his skin. He sold his soul for dreams of peace. Now Houdini's rictus grin and a blind eye turned in ignorance is all that's left of. Let's break the bread and carve the meat and pour the wine. Let's call a halt to hostilities. This is peace time. Oh, let this world spin on its axis with its axis primed to grind. We have no need for enemies. This is peace time. And the radio is blaring as the meal is being prepared. There's just one tiny voice imploring, man, the whole world's running scared. Houdini gets a jug. He pours hot fat into the works, stabs a bugger with a beef skewer, pulls a plug out with a jerk. Let's chew the fat, drain the bar, boast like swine. Let's race a toast around the fireside, brother. This is peace time. Until we rise to stand on legs, walk on feet we cannot find, leave this party for that darkness and walk the weaving line. We are just ill-bred, fattened stock without a spine, who cannot see the predator. This is peace time. I am the whirlpool in the ballroom, stuffed with stuffed shirts, sucking in the venom, spitting out indifference. I am the tempest pushing gentle at your window till later in the night when you dream your pillow shattered, when you dream those soft down feathers contain all those little fears blinking hard entwined together. I'll be sitting at the fulcrum of your chaos, blowing all your hopes around with my spitting of indifference, laying waste your house of tissue. Please don't think I wish you harm. Please don't think I wish you. I know poets spat out of academies, stacked in neat piles who just write what they're told to, while anarchist poets may spite them with acid. It makes fuck all difference to the nothing they're doing. But I know poets, pictures of laughter, pouring it out through holes in their hearts, and they're pouring it out till they're dry, down, beaten, and then crying and lending those tears. And last, the poets who look up their poems, who wipe their blank diaries for traces of feeling. For decade on decade, this abscess is swelling till, lastly, they burst. Their funerals are silent. And I'll shoot for the moon with these pea-shooter poems. I'll learn to love through these lines of lycanthropy, putting up stars with these verses of violence, one step ahead of the clocks and the mirrors, reflecting decay in the tide of our stasis. I am the poet. the poet of panic. Wishbone-legged here on the birthbed of poems. See the midwife recoil at the gore on the white sheets as I breathe in this world and I pump out these products. There you go.
Fantastic. Brilliant, Paul. Great way of finishing that then, mate. Really.
I can remember the long one. I couldn't remember the much shorter one.
It's a typical that sometimes. If people are wondering what's happened, obviously, like we had a bit of a hiccup on the last piece originally. So yeah, it's typical that.
Yeah.
So it was brilliant, Paul. Thank you again, mate, for today. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, no worries.
Hang around.
That's fantastic. Thank you.
I need to speak to you off mic, but this is Andy N. Signing out.
Okay.
Stay safe, guys. Thank you again, Paul.
Goodbye.
Bye bye.
Spoken, mate.